So we now return to Locke, and we're going to finish up something that was part of the reading before, but that we left aside for this recording. This is one of the most important things that Locke is known for. Maybe the most, but it's definitely important. And that's Locke's emphasis on property rights. Now, we've already gotten a hint of that where Locke says that if a person tries to steal from you in the state of nature, they can be punishable up to and including punished by death. Now remember there, he says, the thief doesn't have to threaten your life, they just have to say, give me your property. So even there, it's a violation of human rights, but which right in particular? Your right of property. Now certainly if they threaten your life, Locke would say the same, right? But it's enough that if they threaten your right to property, that you can kill them as punishment. And once more, all the usual caveats and yeah, buts apply. Yes, but only in only in the state of nature, not in civil society. In civil society, you chose or consented to give up some of your natural rights to sort of suspend them and let others retain them. So now cops do the punishing, jails do the punishing. You don't judge whether the person should be killed or not. You let someone else judge that. But still, okay? Yes, but you don't have to kill them. He's not saying, someone says, hey, nice watch, give it to me or else, that you must gun them down or something. He's just saying, well, if in the moment you feel like that's the only response that'll keep you safe, then go ahead and do it. Okay, so all those things aside, my point here is that the main focus already has been on property rights being violated, even though, yes, any right being violated would meet with an equal response. His examples have always been property. But as good philosophers, we always have to back up and say, okay, but why is property so important? It seems pretty obvious as to why your right to life would be important and worth defending to the death. It also seems pretty obvious why your right to freedom is important and worth defending. It's pretty obvious, at least as Americans, why your right to political equality, that is, no one's born having more rights than you, and if anyone has more rights than you, it darn well better be something that you freely agreed to. Okay, we understand that that's a right and worth defending to the death. But why is like an old Bob Marley CD in the back of your closet something that has the same kind of moral and political standing? If you bought that at any point, it's your property. And Locke would say, and lots of us would agree, that if I snuck into your room while you were at school, okay, and took that Bob Marley CD out of your closet, even if you weren't listening to it, even if you don't like Bob Marley anymore, even if you have a backup on your computer, even if ... right? It's unacceptable, it's theft, it's wrong, and it should be punished. Right? I mean, is anyone... Okay, so, again, how do I want to say this? In ethics, we try to make claims about good and bad, better and worse, etc. Now, you can't just run around saying, this is how things are. I think this is good and that's bad. I mean, you can, but you won't get very far in life doing that. And if you just tell me something good because it feels like it's a good thing to you, I'm going to politely listen, and then frankly, you're not really saying anything, so I'm allowed to sort of ignore the non-saying that you're saying. So when we think something's right or wrong, if it matters at all whether it's right or wrong, you want to try to find a good reason why it's right or wrong. Now, most people in their day-to-day life don't do this. Philosophers, though, that's a huge chunk of what we do. We don't take anything for granted. We want to have good reasons, not just reasons that were handed to us by authority figures. And we want to have reasons that we understand, not just vague feelings that we don't understand. when we do things, okay? When we justify what's good or bad. So even something as obvious for why it's wrong for me to smash your car windows, wrong for me to go into the back of your closet and steal your shoes or your Bob Marley CD or whatever, even though in our gut that feels really wrong, and it most certainly is, we have to know why. Okay? Okay, we have to know why. Think about it. For some crimes, people get executed, right? So if some crimes are punishable by death, still, even civil society, for God's sakes, if you're willing to kill someone for something, you darn well better have a very long list of very good reasons that I can't argue with before you're going to take someone else's life. It very well might be the right thing to do. But if you do it without calmly explaining to me why it's the right thing to do, I'm going to think that you're like a barbarian. I don't know how else to put it. And that's nothing to say whether the death penalty is right or wrong. That's true for anything. If you're going to punish something, you have to tell me why it's okay for you to lay hands on another human being. And this is me speaking as Locke here, okay? As me and as Locke. Okay. So enough of this, all this doom and gloom stuff, right? Okay. So the point is, even though you know and you're correct that your property is yours, and we both know that it's wrong if I mess with it, we want to know why, partly because it'll help us figure out what punishments are appropriate, but also just, you have to know why. So this is what Locke says. He says, look, again, in the state of nature, which is not some ancient historical past, that's not what he means, but is what would it be like if there weren't already laws written down about what counted as property and what doesn't, about what the punishments are for stealing and what the punishments aren't, right? What would it just be if you found yourself with a bunch of other people with no cops around, no laws, no constitution, none of that? What would count as yours and what wouldn't? What could you legitimately say, I have a claim on that and it's mine. You can only touch it if you ask, and I say yes. And what other things can you say, well, I've got no claim over that. So once more, what natural human rights do you have to which things before a government starts coming around and saying, I'll take that, you can keep that, right? Okay. So this is what Locke says. He says, in the state of nature, independent of any national laws, just through natural human rights that all of us have equally, if there's something that isn't claimed by anyone yet, it's nobody's property. So if, once more, not to sound apocalyptic, but if the United States government fell tomorrow, if we all decided we didn't like the Constitution anymore and we peacefully undid the government, then you wouldn't be bound by speed limits anymore. You wouldn't be bound by, that warning that they show at the beginning of movies sometimes where it says FBI says that copying this is piracy and you'll go to jail and all that. Okay, none of that it'd be all null and void. It wouldn't count anymore. So then we'd say, well, whose is whose? How do we figure it out? And what Locke says is, well, if that happens and you and I walk into Yellowstone, none of that belongs to anybody. Now, it can come to belong to us. That is, we can convert it into property. But at that stage, he just says, they're just natural objects. You walk into Yellowstone and you see a deer, it's just a deer. It's not my deer. It's not your deer. It's just an animal. It's just a natural object. Okay? And that makes sense, right? In fact, actually, anywhere you can go hunting right now, even in civil society, that's still the case. The deer in there don't really belong to anybody yet. Or Locke says you can say they belong equally to all of us, but let's not, that's confusing, right? Let's say it's nobody's property yet. Now, you and I both see the deer. Maybe you and I both want the deer. Who knows? But until one of us does something to the deer, until one of us does something to the natural object with our bodies, it remains nobody's, and it's just a natural object. Now, as soon as I raise my gun to my shoulder, because remember, even in the state of nature, we have property, we have technology, there's other people, and I shoot the deer, now it becomes my property. Okay, you're vegetarian, you don't like that example. He also gives the examples of the acorns. He says you walk through the natural, the state of nature, that is no government, forest, there's acorns lying around. Are you allowed to pick them up? Yeah, I mean, if nobody else has picked them up, if that's not a tree that somebody else planted as their property, okay, they're nobody's acorns yet. Now he says, as soon as you stoop over and as much as touch the acorn or pluck it off the tree, as soon as your body touches it, it becomes yours. And doesn't that make sense? When you think about touching it, is it yours yet? No. That's like saying a job is yours as soon as you think about applying. That's ridiculous. Is it yours as soon as you reach towards it? No, not quite. Is it yours once you touch it? Yeah. So if you reach up and you haven't yet touched an acorn, and I said, hey, buddy, what are you doing? And you get all distracted, it's not quite your acorn yet. But if you reach out and take it, and even if you've only had it in your hand 1 hot second, and I take it out of your hand, wouldn't you say that I just stole it from you? Okay, so here's the core of property, Locke says. At least the beginning of like the first pieces of property is that you take a natural object being defined as not yet anybody's property, and you somehow mix your own body with the natural object. You touch the acorn. You take your bullets, which are your property and your stuff, right? Or let's say you kill it with like a knife, so it's your own force, right, of your own body. You kill the deer. Okay, you mix some of your body with the body of the natural object. You go to the tree and you saw it down. It's your energy against its energy. You win, it becomes yours. That's what property is at bottom for Locke. You take something which does not belong to anybody. You use your own body to somehow convert it into something which only belongs to you. Okay? Pretty straightforward. Straightforward when we're talking about acorns and deer in the state of nature. The trick is, how are we going to apply this to property today? How are we going to use this to resolve difficulties and questions today? So let's go slowly and let's go patiently. We still haven't quite said why you touching the object with your body makes the other thing, the natural body, the object, become property. Well, Locke puts it this way. He says, do you have any natural property rights? Like, do you own anything, have control over anything before you start making property by killing deer and collecting acorns? He says, sure you do. You own your body, right? Now, in one way, this sounds very weird. I do not think of my body as something I own. I didn't buy it. I don't plan on selling it. Pretty sure I can't sell it. Yeah, okay. So it sounds a little strange, but let's put it this way. When you own something, it's yours, right? Yeah. And when you own something, you have complete control over it, not other people, right? Yes, also correct. So if one way to think about what it means to own something is that it belongs to you, and you can control it or dispose of it, as Locke says. It doesn't mean dispose like throw away, but do things with it. Position it. Pose means sort of position, like move it around as you see fit. So if owning something means it belongs to you and that you can do with it as you see fit, then surely your body belongs to you and is property in that sense, right? Okay. So we can add another justification of this. Think about what it would mean if your body weren't your property. Think about what that would mean. It would mean that somehow your body was just another thing in the world that other people could do with as they saw fit. Or another way to put this is, if you didn't have complete control over your body, if you didn't have full property rights over your own body, you would have full property rights over nothing. That is, if we would say that you somehow don't control or own your body, you have literally nothing in this world. Right? If you say, I have freedom of thought, and then I drag your body into a jail cell for no reason and lock it up. What kind of freedom of thought is that, right? So Locke says basically, your right to your body is very important. And it looks like property right already. It surely is yours, and it's about doing what you want with the thing. You can move the thing, your body, however you see fit. So what he says is, actually, the reason why the acorn becomes your property as soon as you touch it is because you've literally taken your original piece of property, your own body, and sort of mingled it and mixed it with the object that now becomes your property. It happens before this. Think about it. If you pop the acorn in your mouth, or you put a slice of pizza in your mouth and start chewing it, you're mingling it with your saliva. It's inside of the surface of your body, right? It's like in between your layers of skin. I'm going to say it's yours at that point. You feel me? I renounce all claims of that. I think it's yours by right. Okay? Your body is so intimately yours that things that somehow are a product of your physical labor, or that you somehow mix your bodily labor with, they become yours. So here's the payoff. That was the slow and patient part. Here's the sum total. Property right for Locke is grounded in or justified in the fact that you have an original property right in your own body. What that means is that if someone touches your property, it is literally, not metaphorically, literally just as wrong as them laying hands on your physical body for no reason. If someone takes your property for Locke, it is wrong for literally the exact same reason and to the same exact extent as if they tried to take part of your physical body. Think about it. If I reached out and touched one of my students by grabbing their clothes, I was angry at them and I grabbed their clothes, they would justifiably be furious. I'd probably lose my job for that, and I think people should lose their job for that kind of crap. Now, if I said, I didn't touch their body, you see how it's sort of ludicrous? Or if I took their book and I sort of threw it out the window, I might not get fired for that. But it's about more than the fact that the book costs money. It's that it's theirs. And when it's theirs, it doesn't matter if it's a pencil, which doesn't cost very much money, or a computer, which costs a lot more. It's that they have a basically nearly sacred right to that stuff, in the same way, and in fact for the same exact reason, that they have a nearly sacred right to their own body. Now, if you tell me I can use your pencil, just like if you tell me that I can grab your clothing, because we're in jiu-jitsu class together, then it's not assault, then it's not theft, because you gave permission. But the point is this. I can give permission about any of my property for anyone to do whatever they want with it. That's called giving a gift. I just went on vacation. I bought souvenirs for family and friends. My hard-earned labor went into getting money, which then went into getting those things. Right? Now, if I give them away freely, if I give my mom this mug that I got freely, that's fine. It's a gift. That's me choosing what to do with my property, and now it becomes hers. But if my mom, even my wonderful, lovely mom, if she comes into my house and takes a mug, I might not press charges, but it's still illegal, right? If she comes into my house and takes a mug without asking, it's theft. So, property rights are very important. In the same way that you are upset and worked up when someone else physically assaults someone else, even if you don't know them, You should be just as upset when someone violates someone else's property rights, even if you don't know them. And you probably are, right? If you hear that some farmers, all their cows got stolen, you're probably sort of PO'd about that, right? Or if you walk by someone's car and the windows are smashed and the stereo's stolen, people don't really do that as much anymore, but it happens. Or shoot, that your car thefts are up in Austin, Texas, where you don't live. You're probably like, man, what is the world coming to? Why don't people just respect other people's property? Just quit doing it. It's wrong. Right? It makes you mad. It should make you mad, is what Locke says. Okay. And it's just like you're mad if physical assaults went up in Austin, Texas, where you don't live. It's human rights, and you should be PO'd about it. You should hope that something changes about that. Okay. So, the point is this. All property is generated in a roughly similar way. Yes, you're right. We don't go out and forage for acorns anymore. In fact, good luck finding a forest that isn't owned by somebody. So how do we generate labor today? How do we generate property today? Please note this next part is not in the section of Locke we're reading now, but it's how it works. Today, most of us get property not by directly mixing our physical body with a natural object which so far belongs to no one. Rather, it's that we consent through contracts to use our physical body to work for someone, and then they choose, because this is how contracts work, they choose to give us something for our labor. So it's a little more complicated, but at bottom it's the same. I have the free choice to do whatever I want with my body, including nothing. But if I talk to you beforehand and say, hey, if I do these certain things with my body, I walk into a classroom or I stand in front of a recording machine and talk for a certain amount of period of time, will you pay me X amount of dollars every time I do that? And the lovely university which we attend says, yeah, you're all right, I suppose. Hopefully they like me better than that. Point being, with my freedom, I move my body certain places and do certain things with it. That generates property in our contemporary world because someone else wants me to do that stuff and says, hey, property which they've generated, this is what the boss says. The boss says, hey, property which I've generated through my own different labor, I will swap you. I will swap you property of money for property of the things I do with my body. And so long as we agree in advance to do that, that's how we make property nowadays. We're basically circulating property that already exists instead of pulling out brand new property, carrots from the earth, pulling them straight out. Okay? So a few quick things to say about this. In Locke, it is not the time you spend that makes something yours. Because you're spending time right now listening to this lecture, correct? But it's not generating any property for you. In fact, technically this lecture remains my property. I'm not going to sue you if you share it with your friends, but technically it belongs to me or possibly the university, depending on what sort of contract I sign. But details. What's important is that for Locke, it's that you did something with yourself. It doesn't matter how difficult it was, because if the university wants to pay me twice what someone else does, and the job is half as difficult for me, that's fine. Same thing with the acorn. It doesn't matter how difficult it is to take the acorn off the tree. It's just that you did something. So this is why in Locke we say it's a labor theory of value. It's about the labor or the work you do. It's not, however, about how hard that work is. It's not even about how much time it takes. It's just that you did something. Literally that you made something where there wasn't something before. So don't get confused. Just because you pay for courses by the credit hour and most jobs are hourly wages, that's just a particular way you and I find convenient to decide what to pay people. That is not the core origin of property. once more, if it were just about how much time it took, then we'd all get paid the same hourly wage. If it were about how difficult it was, then CEOs wouldn't make as much money. And, jobs that pay very little, like being a janitor, a custodial agent, would pay a lot more because that's hard work. So at least for Locke, there's other economic theories, but at least for Locke, it's just about that you did something and made something when there wasn't anything there before. And then quick summary before we move on. That right is sacred. Okay? It's just as sacred as the fact that people can't touch your body without asking. Okay, another summary point. Like gifts, you can choose to give your property away. That's completely fine. Just like you can choose in a contract to do physical stuff for someone else, and then they can choose to give you money for that stuff. Okay? But the choice has to be there. Consent. Remember, it all goes back to consent for Locke. You can consent to darn near anything. On the flip side, though, anything without your consent is a violation of your rights. Okay? What else? There's a few other important things. Oh, another important thing I want to add here is this. Remember that Bob Marley CD I started out talking about? Okay? It doesn't matter if you're not using the property. It doesn't matter if it would benefit someone else more. It doesn't matter if you're already rich. So think of someone who lives in a house with the one room has 5 closets. In the back of one of their closets is this old Bob Marley CD that nobody's using and listening to anymore. And they even have a backup on their computer. So they're literally harmed in no way whatsoever when you steal it from their closet. It's still stealing, right? It's definitely still a crime. And Locke would say, with a lot of us, yeah, you violated their right. Okay? So for Locke, for a lot of us, but we'll just say for sure for Locke, it doesn't matter how badly the person is hurt. Theft is theft, whether you steal 1 wheel off someone's car or 4 wheels. Now, it may be a worse theft if you take all 4, but if you take any part of their car without permission, even just the hood ornament or the antenna, whatever, any piece of the physical property of their car that you take is theft. Okay. So I'll stop the recording here, but can you see where all this is going to go? I'm not trying to make you feel bad, but what this means for digital property, that is intellectual property like songs, music, movies, books, professor recordings, all this sort of stuff, TV shows, is that if it was property, that is, if someone's labor generated something where there wasn't property before, and a few conditions here, and if they did not give you permission to make copies of it, to watch it without paying, etc., so it wasn't a gift, then it is theft. Now, even if it's harmless, like stealing a CD that no one's listening to anymore, even if it's maybe a drop in the bucket, it doesn't really affect them, like stealing 1 wheel would affect you less than stealing 4 wheels would affect you. Still theft. Right? So this is the thing, is when you and I say I because I do it too, I'll be honest, when you and I watch a movie without paying for it, in most cases, that is property theft. And as Locke says, and as the Constitution agrees, if you violate someone's natural rights, you deserve to be punished. Intellectual or digital or non-physical property rights are still property rights. And you and I in this modern world, we just keep on going and violating them. Right? So that's what we're going to wrestle with now, and we'll get into some of the details. But I think you can see how the logic applies. Okay, so that's the end of this recording. We'll see where that goes in future recordings. Thank you.